Zoology was not always an exact science. Thousands of years ago, people like Aristotle and Pliny the Elder attempted to organize all that was known about animals into vast encyclopedic volumes. However, they didn't always get the specifics correct. Before aeroplanes, cameras, and Google, the majority of people had never seen an elephant. If they wanted to know what an elephant looked like, they could only ask someone who had seen one, and they had to believe whatever they heard. They sometimes wrote down those odd responses, and for nearly 2,000 years, people across Europe simply accepted them as true. Elephants constantly fight dragons. Elephants were fascinating to the Greeks and Romans. They had seen them in India and Africa and were persuaded they were the most intelligent creatures on the earth. It was a realistic belief. They'd already trained elephants to do remarkable things like walk on tightropes and trace Greek letters with a brush. People were willing to believe whatever they read or heard about elephants. When an elephant happens to meet a man in the desert, according to a Roman dictionary, and realizes the man is lost, then the elephant points out the way. However, the book warned that getting an elephant on a boat was impossible, no matter how dependable they were at giving directions. An elephant would refuse to embark unless someone ensured that it would arrive home safely. The same text stated that dragons were perpetually at war with the elephant. In India, dragons were continually swooping down on elephants and attempting to smash them, hungry for their icy blood. However, an attentive elephant could knock down a dragon and smash it underfoot. It's all really strange, but it doesn't appear like anyone tried to alter it. Over a century later, another book was published making nearly identical claims. However, it offered a nice little detail. This book claimed that elephants reproduce by consuming a magical root that caused kids to appear spontaneously in their wombs. Eels grow out of mud. According to ancient texts, salamanders are not the only animals that emerge spontaneously. Aristotle was sure that many animals did. He attempted to persuade the public of a few instances of what he termed spontaneous generation. His thought that eels suddenly sprout out of muck, however, stuck with me the most. For over 2,000 years, no one questioned Aristotle's eels just magically appear idea. However, not everyone agreed on how it transpired. Pliny claimed they formed kids by rubbing against rocks, whereas Isaac Walton, a 17th century English writer, insisted they sprouted from a particular dew falling in the months of May and June. Everyone agreed on one thing though: eels are a gift from God. It took until the 19th century to prove that eels could reproduce. The trouble was that no one could locate their reproductive organs. Finally, however, the world produced a man who was ready to probe about in people's private bits for long enough to figure it out: Sigmund Freud. That's correct. Before becoming the father of psychology, Freud solved the issue of how eels turn malevolent. Whales have antennae. In the 17th century, a Frenchman named Pierre Pommet published a book about the natural world that included pictures of the weird animals that inhabit our planet. Each drawing was filled with gorgeous, vivid details of what these weird creatures looked like, all based on what Pommet had seen when he closed his eyes and imagined incredibly hard. Pommet's whales in particular appeared unusual. He insisted on distinguishing between male and female whales based on their heads. According to Pommet, the men had fingers, a lengthy sheet of metal on their backs, and gigantic armored heads resembling those of a Chinese dragon. On top, there were two long antennas, each with a fluffy little pom-pom at the end. His female whales looked more realistic, but they still possessed antennae. Pommet thought that these antennae were the key to distinguishing the genders. He claimed that the female's antennas were substantially shorter and stubbier. Crocodiles are basically just monkeys. Ancient civilizations had a good idea of what crocodiles were, but we had lost track of them by the Middle Ages. That becomes evident when you look at the animals labeled as crocodiles in the Book of Flowers, an 11th century encyclopedia, because they are essentially monkeys. Crocodiles are described in the Book of Flowers as having long, curly tails, hands, and hairy cheeks. It's an odd description, and it's easy to believe that they simply got the names mixed up. But their vision of crocodiles is not limited to monkeys. These creatures' bodies are long, rough, and scaly, similar to a real crocodile. They simply happen to have monkey heads on top. Over the next few hundred years, our understanding of crocodiles did not improve significantly. Later, medieval artists improved the tails while maintaining the monkey features. Others gave these beasts huge, horse-like legs or made them resemble dogs with scales. Because no one who had really seen a crocodile bothered to correct them, European artists continued to represent crocodiles in this manner until around the 17th century.